Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Today we are in the final video of a series of 4. It's probably worth your while checking out some of the other videos, specifically the pen tool video. It's important for me that people check out the pen tool video because it's about how to get good without getting upset. And it's quite upsetting trying to learn the pen tool video. But I'm hoping that by the end of watching that video, you'll be good and confident and there'll be no tears. Now, this video is all about luminosity masking. So previously we were talking about pulling luminosity information from red channel, green channel or blue channel independently. This is about separating just the luminosity of your image into the highest highlights, your high highlights, your midtones, your shadows, your darkest shadows, and your blacks. You're able to make a mask specifically based on those lightness values, which means, say for example, if I've got a portrait and I've got a little hotspot on my head here, I can target just that hotspot with a curves adjustment or a levels adjustment or any other number of color grading options, but only on the lightest pixels. So really, really useful technique, especially if you're a portrait photographer and you're looking at working on your skin tones. Really, really useful stuff. So we'll jump straight in, but I do want to say I'm going to recommend a plugin for you. I'm not affiliated to this plugin manufacturer. I've seen some of his videos and some of his training stuff. I really like him. Seems like a great guy. But every technique that we're going to use can be done just generically in Photoshop. Couple of shortcuts, couple of clicks, we're good to go. But if you think this technique is going to be really useful for you, I would recommend that you go out and grab a copy of this plugin. So let's jump into Photoshop and I'll show you all about it. So I'm in Photoshop now, and although, just as a very quick recap, although in the last tutorial we did look at the luminosity values specifically from the individual channels, that technique, although it's based on luminosity, is known as a channel pull. So if you want to learn more about it or see it being used in other use case scenarios, you can just Google up channel pull or search on YouTube for channel pull, and you're pulling the information out of each individual channel, hence the name. Now we're going to be looking specifically at luminosity, and I'm going to make this as quick as I can because although I'm going to show you some great techniques, I also want to just introduce you to a plugin that I use pretty regularly, and it only costs I think $30. It's well worth it, and it will completely negate the majority of this tutorial because it's so awesome to use. Anyway, nonetheless, let's crack on. What I'm going to do is come across to my channels and holding down Control or Command, instead of clicking on the individual layer to make a selection based on that layer, like the red, green or blue channel like we did in the previous tutorial, I'm just going to hold down Command or Control and click on the RGB layer, and that is going to make a selection based on the luminosity. So essentially a black and white composite of all 3 layers. So if I click here on the save selection as channel icon, I'll get a new, press Command and D to deselect, a new what looks like a black and white copy of my image. Now this is actually all of the highlights, so I'm going to name this Highlight 1. Now I'd also like to have a copy of the shadows, so if I duplicate that by dragging it onto this little plus icon here, and with this layer selected, hold down Command and press I now have the shadows. And you might be thinking, no you've not. That's a disaster, you've got a negative black and white image. But remember, that's what masks are. This isn't actually a black and white picture, it's my mask. And where I have white, I'm letting pixels through, and where I have black, I'm hiding pixels, and vice versa for this one. White is letting things through and black is hiding things. Now in this case, because it's inverted, the white area is the shadow in my image. So let's see a practical use case for this. What I'm going to do is a really quick, lame, quick and dirty blue and teal edit for this, because we love it, don't we? Sorry, teal and orange edit for this. We love a bit of teal and orange. So what I'm going to do is hold down Command and click on my highlights, and that's going to load up my highlights as a selection. I'm going to go to solid color, and in my highlights, I think I'm going to put a nice orange. That'll do. Okay. It's not that nice. And then in my channels, I'm going to go and select shadows, holding down Command. I'm going to click on my shadows. That will load up my selection. I'm going to add another solid color. And this time it's going to be a sort of tealy colour. I think I want something a little bit darker, maybe this. Okay, now one is being applied to the highlights and one is being applied to the shadows. They both look pretty awful, so I'm just going to turn them off and I'm going to start. In fact, let's start with the shadows. Sorry guys, let's start with the shadows. I'm going to drag this down here and I'm going to make it soft light, and straight away I'll get a better effect, but it's a bit strong, so I'm going to pull that down to maybe about 50%. Now I've got blues only being applied to my shadows. Here I've got oranges applied as a solid colour to my highlights, so I'm going to come and make those soft light and again bring it down to about 50%, so it matches the strength. I'm not really finessing this because I just want to show you what's what. And now if I put these two, if I hold down Command or Control while I select them, hold Command or Control and press G, I've got them in a group and I can turn them on and off, and there's my really quick and dirty orange and teal colour grade. But what's happening is if I hold down Alt and click on my mask, I can see the masks that have been applied, and where there is white I'm letting my blue show through, and on this layer where there is white I'm letting the orange show through. Now it's not really that selective though, is it? What I could do if I wanted a more extreme mask is use the same technique I've done in my previous tutorial, hold down Command and L for levels and make my blacks darker. And therefore I'm cutting off more of my orange effect. So I could bring my mask right down, and I'm only going to be putting orange directly onto the highest highlights. It's much more subtle now. In fact, let me bring that up to 100% so we can see that happening. But I think I can do better than that for you. I think I can do better than that. Let's delete this and we'll go back to our channels. Now, firstly, I just want to show you, here you've got your highlights and here you've got your shadows. Well, what if you wanted a selection of your midtones? So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is go Command and A or Control and A. And now I've selected the whole image. You can see I've got dancing ants all the way around. Now, in fact, before I do that, let's just make sure we're clear about one thing. And that is the Option or Alt key. Hey, where did my let's go? The Option or Alt key is a modifier key. There we go. Sorry guys. So if, say for example, it's easier for you to see if I get this marquee tool. At the moment it's set to additive. So if I draw a marquee, you'll notice the little plus sign next to it, and I can draw another one, and I'm adding to my selection. Now if I hold down Alt, you see the little plus sign turns to a minus sign, and now I'm subtracting from my selection. So the Alt key is this modifier key, and we're going to use that here. So what I'm going to do is go Command and A, and I've selected everything. Now we already know if I put my mouse over the thumbnail, I get my little pointer and I can click on this to see the individual layers. But if I hold down Command or Control, I get the little square icon with the dotted line around it telling me I'm about to make a selection. Now instead of making a selection, I'm going to hold down Alt and I will subtract the highlights from my current selection. Now if I do the same thing on shadows, I'm going to hold down Command or Control and Alt or Option and click on shadows. You'll see this. No pixels are more than 50% selected. That's fine. I'm totally happy with that. I'll click OK. Now I've got a selection. Although I can't see it, it's a mysterious invisible selection. But if I click on this new channel from selection icon, you'll see that what I get is my midtones. Everything's very flat here. Everything's very grey. And this is a mask that will allow me to add style to my midtones only. So I'm going to pop that in the middle. And now I've got highlights, midtones, shadows. Now, remember I talked to you about the modifier keys. What I would like to do in this situation, let's come back to the RGB. If I look at her forehead, now this isn't too much of a hotspot, but if I decided I've put this beauty dish on and caused a bit of a hotspot here, I'd like to dial that down a little bit actually. How am I going to just select this area? Well, let's see. What I'm going to do is come to my highlights, and to begin with, I'm going to make my initial selection. I'm going to hold down Command or Control and click. And now I've got my highlights selected. Now I already said if I hold down that and press Alt, I get the little minus sign. But if I also hold the Shift button, I get an X sign, a multiplier. Now, whenever I've seen this done in a tutorial on YouTube in the past, the way that this has been explained to me is that I'm going to select all pixels that intersect with the current selection. What the hell does that even mean? I mean, it just sounds really confusing. So what I want you to know is just press all the buttons, guys. Command or Control, Alt or Option, Shift. You'll see that little X, that's a multiplication sign. I'm going to click, and now suddenly look, my selection seems much smaller. It's a much smaller area. I'm going to click on my little masking icon, and you'll notice that my channel, my channel that I've selected is much darker. So now I've got much more contrast, and I'm only letting the highest highlights through. I'm going to call this Highlights 2. Okay, now I might think I've still not really just selected her forehead, have I? If I put on an effect on this, like maybe a curves or adjustment layer, it's going to go all the way across her face, all the way across her chest, some of the highlights on her lips, and so on. So I'm going to do it again. First, I'm going to Command or Control and click and make my initial selection. Then I'm going to hold all the buttons, click it again, click my new channel from selection icon, have a look at it, and it's even darker again. I'm going to go Command and D so I can see it. I'm going to call that Highlights 3, unsurprisingly. I'm going to drag that up to the top, and if I use this, I'd be getting the highlight on her cheek, the highlight on her lip. I want even more control. So I'm going to Command or Control and click. I'm going to hold down all the buttons, guys, and click it again. Press the same button again, and now look. This is just going to let the highlights come through. I could do it one more, but I did a dry run on this tutorial, and I found that although the mask looked like it would be better, it was so subtle you couldn't even see the difference. So I'm going to stop here. Highlights 4. Now, what can I do with this? Let's say I'm going to go Command and D to deselect. Now as I want to apply different effects to my image, I can come here and choose the mask that seems like the most suitable mask. So in this case, I'm going to Command Control click to load up my selection, come back to my layers. In fact, let's choose RGB so we know what we're looking at. And I'm going to put on a curves layer, and you'll see the curves layer loads with my mask already applied. And if I go to my curve, if I pull this down pretty dramatically, you'll notice it's just affecting the highest of the highlights. Now, this is also picking up some of the highlight on her cheek and the bridge of her nose, but I can moderate that just with my brush. So I said in this case, I just want to bring down the hot spot on her forehead. If I did want to attack some of these other highlights, I could do it all in one go, but let's say because I want to stick to my original mission, that I'm just looking to bring down this highlight from her forehead. I've done this. I can still, there's nothing to stop me coming into my mask, grabbing my brush, making sure that it is on normal mode, and I haven't left it on overlay. Guys, you're going to do that all the time when you start using these techniques. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller and just brush. I've got really crazy flow. There we go, 100%. Just brush over her face. Now my mask is literally only applying this effect to her forehead, and I'm not affecting anywhere else on her face. So this is a really, really good way to accurately target pixels based on their luminosity value and then edit them accordingly. So guys, just very quickly, I'm going to show you how I could have done that here as well. These are my shadows. If I Command and Control click, hold down all the buttons, click it again, make a new selection based on that, you'll notice that, let's turn that one off. It's all got a little bit darker. And let's do it again. I'm going to Command click on this, do it again. Here we go. And again, I'm only letting through the darkest of highlights. I'm going to do this again. Normally, obviously, you would want to keep renaming them, but I just want to rush through this. I'm sure you understand the naming process for now. Hold on, that didn't work. Press the wrong button. This one. So now, this mask is only allowing effects or any of my work to be applied to the darkest pixels in the image. I'm going to deselect it so you can see it. Now I'm going to reselect it so we can actually work with it. I'm going to come across here and make a new curves layer. Here it is. Let's turn it off so we're not looking at it in my layer stack. And now this curves layer will only be applied to the darkest pixels in my image. And obviously I can carry on intersecting and intersecting and intersecting and making darker and darker selections. So you see I can do whatever I like to this. Now if I wanted to add a little bit of blue, I could come to my blue channel and just throw in a ton of blue, and it's only going to affect the darkest areas in my image. So guys, this is the basics of luminosity masking. What I'm going to do very quickly though is just delete these layers and show you just an amazing plugin. Like I said, this plugin, I'm not affiliated to this guy at all, incidentally. His name's Nino Batista. If you've not come across him, you can check him out on YouTube. He's really good. He's got a plugin called Lumizone. This is it. It will make a selection based on the luminosity of the pixels, but you can see a couple of things. Number one, I can choose whether I'm working with the red, green or blue channel directly from this panel, and it's showing me the histogram, how many dark and how many light pixels there are in each of the individual channels. I'm going to stick on luminosity. I can do what's called saturation masking as well. We'll deal with that another day, guys. So I can choose to look at the composite or my mask. In this case, I'm going to flick to the mask, and I'm just going to choose my midtones. And oh, can we not see the mask? There we go. These are all of my midtones just showing through. Nothing too bright, nothing too dark, and I get a visual representation of it applied to my histogram. I've changed my mind and I just want my darks. These are all of the darks. Notice that looks very similar to my original dark mask that we made in the channels window, but here I can quickly turn off zones. This would only be the absolute darkest pixels in my image. Or alternatively, I could go for just the absolute lightest pixels in my image. And again, see how this looks very similar to the mask we were working on when we were just targeting the very highlights on her forehead. Now, this has become my favorite method for working. And you can see as well, I can make a bunch of really crazy selections. Like for example, if I wanted just the darks and the highlights, but to completely leave the midtones alone, and I could go for just the very darkest and just the very lightest. For example, the bottom half of the image versus the top half of the image. So this allows me to very, very quickly make a bunch of masks and apply them to my image, or in this case, I mean, I probably wouldn't do it to my image. Let me right click this to select my mask, and then let's disable this mask. And let's add in a new layer. What am I looking at here? This was just the highlights. So let's add something like a curves layer. And let's get rid of Lumizone. And we'll go for the reds. And we'll just add some more reds into our highlights. And take them out of our shadows. Won't make any difference. Okay, so guys, Lumizone plugin. I really like it. It's pretty new for me. It's not the... you can see when I'm turning the mask on and off actually what's happening. Let's just quickly check that again. I'm going to do... choose just my red channel. I'm going to throw in an absolute ton of reds. There we go. Now, without Lumizone, it looks like this, mental. And here, it still looks pretty mental, but you kind of get the idea of how easy it is to make a selection using the Lumizone plugin. So guys, it costs $30. If you've not got budget to spend, you can use this method, and it's a really, really good method for targeting individual pixels and setting up really complicated masks. And remember, of course, like I've said before, once you've got your mask set up, it's not permanent. You can still work with this mask. You can bring up a levels control and do a little more to it. You can draw all over it. You can play with it however you like. Masking is going to give you a ton of power and control, and you should consider it to be one of the most sort of versatile tools in your toolbox. Don't be afraid to get into some really in-depth masking, guys. But yeah, if you just want a shortcut and you can spare $30, I would recommend the Lumizone plugin. It's absolutely brilliant. And as usual, I don't know if you've noticed, by the way, but I've been through, I think maybe 4 tutorials now on masking, and I don't think I've said like and subscribe a single time. I just wanted you to push on to the next tutorial. And I have mentioned, if you've got any questions, if you're struggling with any of this, like I could fully relate. So just get in touch, reach out to me one way or another, either on YouTube in the comments, drop me a DM, find me on Facebook or Instagram, however you like. I will help you out, guys, if you're struggling with this. But as this is the final tutorial in this series, I should also say, if you want to learn more, guys, just hit like and subscribe, hit the bell, you'll get a notification, and the next time I put something out, we can hopefully level up together. Oh yeah, also, if you've got anything else to add, drop it in the comments, man. If you've got a decent tutorial somewhere that you've seen, or you would do anything that I've done here slightly differently, message me and let me know. I can always update these videos or add a few hints and tips to the other people who are watching. So yeah, guys, this has been great. I hope it was useful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.